H-Town Nation, what's going on? My name is Clayton Anderson. I'm the host of the We Want Houston podcast. Welcome to episode 10. This is pretty awesome, pretty cool. Hope everyone's doing good on this wet day. I know there's been some emergency, potentially proclamations, so I hope everyone's safe. If you don't have to drive, please don't. But I cover the Houston Texans nonetheless for Toro Time through the Fansided Network. Joining me today is a man who I respect very much so. I've been looking forward to this day. I've always wanted to collaborate with him, so I'm glad that he's here. Host of the Texans Today show with Chat Sports, Mr. Jeremy Chuggs. Jeremy, how
Appreciate you for having me, man. Appreciate you for having me. We've been bouncing back and forth on social media. I love what you do as well, so I'm just glad to be here. We were talking about before the show. It's the dog days of the summer, but we still have a little bit of Texans stuff that we can talk about, kind of satiate our Texans fandom until the rookies report next week for training camp. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely, bro. It's my honor and my privilege, sir. Yes, absolutely. As you said, this is the dog days of summer. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but we are not just going to be hot take artists. We have some real analysis to get into. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We actually, full disclosure, had a whole rundown plan before this, but after this morning, we just switched some things up because we have some Texans content to cover, of course. So, but first things first, right? The most latest thing. We got to talk about this Lamar Jackson at number 69 overall on the NFL's top 100 list. Now, preface, we understand this is a player-driven list. This is not executives. This is not coaches. It's not, you and I. These are the players, the friends, the contemporaries, the locker room mates of these guys who are telling Jeremy here that Lamar Jackson, two-time MVP, is ranked 69th overall in the NFL. Now, why does that connect to this show? Well, because C.J. Stroud has yet to appear on this list. And let me go ahead and put this up. So, along with Lamar being where he is at, we already had Bryce Young at 98th. We had Brock Purdy at 85. We had Baker Mayfield at 77. Jay Love at 72. Lamar at 69. So, Jeremy, I'm going to toss it over to you real quick. So, am I being too doom and gloom by looking at this and saying it looks increasingly likely that C.J. Stroud may miss out on this list? If Lamar Jackson, even with the injuries, if Lamar Jackson slid 67 spots to 69 overall, is C.J. Stroud making the list? Yes or no? Am I being doom or gloom?
No, I don't think you're being doom or gloom at all. I mean, like, this is like seeing the rain clouds out there and being like, I think it's gonna rain. Like, if you see rain clouds, if it starts to sprinkle, pretty good chance that it's gonna rain. And I think right here, like, you hit the nail on the head. Lamar Jackson being on the list at 69, Lamar Jackson just appearing before we've seen CJ Stroud means there is no way in any world that CJ Stroud is going to be on this list. Like, I'm sorry, hate to be that guy for Texans fans, but if Lamar Jackson is there at 69, I don't think there's a possibility that CJ Stroud, his name will come up on this list. And, like, I saw your tweet and, it became more and more increasingly unlikely for him to make the list. Like, first one, like Bryce Young, you're like, okay, yeah, like he's probably better, if not, a little bit better than Bryce Young. I think a lot of Texans fans would agree. Texans have kind of made out pretty well with the Panthers going with Bryce Young one pick ahead of CJ Stroud. And then, you go down the list and you saw some other guys hit there, like maybe like when Baker was there, I was like, I don't think he really played better than Baker last year. And then Jordan Love. And this is just kind of the last, hit into the coffin of like, no way are we going to see CJ Stroud. And, right, I would say somewhat rightfully so, right? Like I thought in the regular season he played well, but I know, like, I was doing, here at Chat Sports, we're doing a quarterback ranking as well. Like, everybody, we ranked the top 40 quarterbacks in the NFL. And when you actually put pen to paper and you're trying to, go back and forth and weigh where CJ Stroud ranks amongst the top quarterbacks in the NFL, it's tough. Like, I have Texas bias, and I ranked him, I believe, like 13th or 14th in the NFL. And it's hard to argue. Like, I think, it's hard to argue. And like, we all know where CJ Stroud was his rookie season and, how good he can be. But it's a difference between like potential and how good we've seen of you and how good you actually played this past season. You know what I mean?
No, I got you, man. Which is why, and look, I have been accused by fellow friend of the show, AD Arthur Dunn, of hoping that CJ misses the list. I'm just like you. I'm a Texans fan. I don't hope that CJ misses the list. but I also am not fond of lying to myself about what I see. Like you said with your analogy, if there's some raindrops coming, I'm not going to say, "Oh wow, man, this is a bright sunny day." No, I'm just, I'd rather steer on the side of caution and realism. So, and again, we're talking about it's not an MVP trophy. This is not the Super Bowl. This is just some fodder. This is conversation, but it does mean something in that this is the players telling you what they think themselves, not execs, not coaches. This is what the contemporaries say. These are your friends. These are guys who played with you, played across from you, who played with you, in your locker room, and they're telling you what they feel. And like I said, man, it's looking increasingly unlikely. Now, to go to the stat argument for a second. So Lamar Jackson, he played, I want to say, what, one less game than CJ did? I think, yeah, I think one less game than CJ did. Passing numbers weren't exciting, about what, 2,500, 2,300, something like that. 21 TDs, 7 picks. So again, slightly pedestrian numbers, but we also got to remember Lamar Jackson is a dual threat quarterback, right? Like he runs for touchdowns. So he does multiple things on the field. So that's what kind of gives him more equity and credence than a CJ, who's more of the traditional throwback pocket passer. Like he's great at like one or two things compared to Lamar, who does a bevy of things. So anyway, my point is Lamar's at 69, and I just don't know where CJ fits in all this. Not that it is the end all be all, but I just don't see it. So that's just me, which feeds us into what happened before that, which was Jeremy Fowler continuing, the releasing of the top 10 rankings amongst different position groups. Linebacker, edge rusher, cornerback, we already got that one. So today was quarterback day. And Jeremy, I know you already saw it, right? And I know
Yeah.
you saw it. Yeah, so CJ didn't land in the top 10, which, again, no one would argue, right? He didn't land in the top 10. But it's when CJ Stroud did not even make it to the honorable mentions that really crystallized it for me. And even more so, Jeremy, and I'm going to toss it over to you. What made it worse for me, or what put it into context more how the league feels about CJ Stroud, is when Jeremy did this. He laid out the tiers. He had Allen Mahomes first tier, Stafford tier two, Burrow Jackson tier three, Prescott Herbie May Golf tier what 1, 2, 3, 4, Williams through Mayfield tier five, Lawrence Hurts six, and then way at the bottom, Knicks, Daniel Jones, and CJ Stroud in tier seven. And just by the placement, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, 18 to 20th for CJ Stroud in tier seven. So Jeremy, I'm just gonna ask you, man, like what's worse, him getting some top 10 votes but just not missing just missing out on honorable mention, or the fact that he's now labeled as a tier 7 QB at 20th overall?
I mean, when you look at it, like, I would say at least him being on the list is a plus because
Mhm.
the way he played last year, like, let's be real. Like, I think if you asked CJ Stroud himself, like, do you think you played up to your standard last year? He'd probably say no, right? Like, he'd probably say, like, I could be a lot better than what I put out on the field the past year, maybe probably the past 2 seasons. He would say that he is much better than the product that he's put out there. So I don't think it's right for us to kind of lie to ourselves and be like, oh, CJ is a top 10 guy. Like what he's put out, like he has the potential to be a top 10 guy. We've seen him make throws that very few other quarterbacks in the NFL have been able to make. And this isn't also, putting it all on CJ because we obviously know, me and you, we've watched all the games over the past few seasons. We've been able to follow his career since he's been drafted from Ohio State, and there's other factors that go into it, right? Like he hasn't had receivers that have stayed healthy, right? Like Nico Collins has yet to have a full 17 game season. He hasn't had an offensive line that he can truly trust, right? Like we've had a lot of problems, especially with stunts along defensive lines. Like we've had a lot of problems protecting CJ at different points. And the running game has been off and on. Like we had a decent one with Mixon. And even that, like I think Mixon was, we don't realize like how good Mixon was that season for how bad the run blocking was at times. Like the amount of times that I saw Joe Mixon make something out of nothing in the backfield, like we didn't have a great run game. We had a good run game because Mixon was kind of playing out of his mind that season.
Mhm.
And, all those factors leading up has been, how CJ Stroud has played within those. And I think, I think it's, sometimes the, reality is somewhere in the middle, right? Like it's, has CJ played like really great at times? Yeah. Like has CJ kind of played bad at times? For sure, but I would still probably put him somewhere in the middle for where I would rank him or how good he's been amongst all the NFL quarterbacks to this point in his career, because we've seen him, like go back to the 49ers game this year. He made a couple throws in that game, and I get the 49ers had some injuries, but he made some throws in that game where you were like, dang, like this dude, he is special. And then I don't even have to point out the game from this past season, the Patriots playoff game, where we all looked and were like, do we need to bench this guy? Like he's had some really high highs, he's had some really low lows, and like I said, the reality is somewhere in the middle. That right now in his career, he is somewhere ranked between 12 and 18. Now, depending on how you view the quarterback position or how much you value different parts of the game, you might have him a little higher, you might have him a little lower. Like I said, like I tried ranking all the quarterbacks in the NFL. I think I came to CJ around 13 or 14 on my list personally, and that's probably way too low for some Texans fans. It's probably way too high for other Texans fans that view CJ Stroud. But I think that, he has so much to prove this season going into this contract year. He can get paid he can get paid right now. I don't think the Texans are going to do it. I think they're going to wait till next season. He can get a huge bag this next year if he balls out. And I think he does still have the potential to be a guy who we see in the top 10 list, to be that guy who, can be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, maybe one day even be better than that. But I think up to this point in his career, we have to be real with what he's put on the field. Like, he's had some bad moments, and we can't just put those to the side and remember the good times, remember the rookie CJ Stroud, and keep on, being like, oh, well, remember he did this. And, that's good. That's great. Right. Like, and I get it. Whenever he, was able to, come to the Texans, we were the worst organization in the NFL by far. And he was able to flip the script and instantly change this team to a playoff team, which does deserve its kudos at the same time as well, right? Because before we were the bottom feeders of the NFL for multiple seasons after the Watson trade. Now him and D'Amico come in, totally change everything, change the culture, change how we view this Texans team. That has to go into it. But at the same time, like, we can't kid ourselves and, have on our rose-colored glasses and say, oh, yeah, well, CJ's a top 10 guy for sure, when he didn't put that out on the field this past season.
No, and I like what you said, man. We can't be ultra Texans biased. We have to be truthful as analysts. We got to say what we see. And I think, to your point, CJ would tell you that he hasn't played his best ball. But nor does that mean we think, or I think, that he's a bottom tier quarterback. I think what gets me is, like, again, when Fowler tiered these guys up and said he's a tier 7 guy, right, at 18 through 20, with Daniel Jones and Bo Nix, right? And please forgive me, Broncos country, but I'm about to call you out again, because Bo Nix, very recency bias. Is he like, oh my gosh, he's a top this quarterback, top that quarterback? He's good, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, he's not a bad quarterback. But again, we've seen what CJ can do. We've seen him literally about to dice up the Denver Broncos defense, which was so, prominent throughout last season. We've seen, like you said, the highs of CJ, we've seen the lows. But to put him with guys like Daniel Jones and Bo Nix, just because he had really, tell the truth, just because he had a horrendously bad 2-game stretch in the playoffs. That's where a lot of this is. Don't let anybody fool you. We're not talking about CJ like he's Nathan Peterman out there. No disrespect. He's not throwing up ham sandwiches, every chance he gets during the game. He didn't go Jameis 30 for 30 on us. He did not do that. He didn't. He's not a turnover machine. None of these things. That's what made it so jarring what happened in the playoffs, because all of these things that we have never known him to do is what he did in such a truncated, space. That's what's so alarming, right? So, but we've allowed that to completely rewrite the narrative on who he is. And now, sad to say, the narrative has been hijacked by not just football people, but basketball people, baseball people, any sport. And I'll say this with, Texans commentator Garrett Williams stresses, where I said it's to the point now where every person, regardless of sport, who has a bad game, they put CJ's face on him, right? They find some kind of way to make fun by putting CJ into the mix somewhere. And it really is out of control. But to keep it purely football, CJ knows. He's lost about, 1,000 yards worth of production since his rookie season, which is not all his fault, like you said. But at some point, okay, but what are you responsible for? And that's all we're saying is this is CJ's moment. He has to take the most ownership that he's probably ever had in his career at the line of scrimmage, in the passing game, knowing how to take a sack, when to throw the ball away, this, that, there's so much going on. But I do believe that CJ Stroud has it in him. We've seen it before. And I just think that he has to not chase the ghost of rookie CJ. No, I think he has to be the new CJ Stroud that understands how to play a grown man's game at a time where defenses know what you want to do and they're trying to take that away from you. So then what's your adjustment, right? That's the next phase. It's not to go back to rookie CJ, it's to modify what worked to make it fit right now, right? So,
Yeah.
and I believe he's capable.
And kind of like what you said with Bo Nix there, with like, uh, we like to just put quarterbacks in a bubble and say like wins, losses, this, that, or the other. It's all on the quarterback. Like it is them. Where that's not entirely true for a lot of people. Like we were having the debate here at the Chat Sports offices, like where should Darnold actually be ranked? Like he won a Super Bowl. He was great this year with the Seahawks. Like should he be a top 6, top 7 quarterback? The big debate here was who's a better quarterback right now, Dak Prescott or Sam Darnold. I've been saying it's Dak Prescott because you have to look at the situations, right? Like, with CJ, like the situations that he's been put in, they haven't been, the best or what you would want for a quarterback. And you see how much situations affect guys. And the one guy I'll point to is Caleb Williams, right? Like this past year, look what they did for him in Chicago. They brought in an offensive minded head coach and somebody who really can get the most out of quarterbacks. And, they also totally revamped the offensive line. They, were able to add a new guard, new center, new guard for him. They had a semblance of a run game. They were able to, get Roman Dunze, Luther Burden as some, extra weapons for him alongside DJ Moore. And he had a much better second season than he did his rookie year. I remember after his rookie season, people were saying, oh my gosh, the Bears made the biggest mistake taking Caleb Williams because the Jaden Daniels and all these other guys look so much better. And within a year, the whole, script is flipped to where people are like, is Jaden Daniels better than Drake May or better than Bo Nick? Like it really like changes on a year-to-year basis. And you have to be able to kind of see through that and see, what the team has done, what the team has put around them, and really just, watch. It's easy to just say like, oh, let's look at the stats, let's look at this, but also like watching the games and seeing like, in that Patriots game, not saying that it wasn't Stroud's fault for some of it, but I mean, one of the picks that he had, he got absolutely blasted and the ball just went straight in the air. Like, yeah, like it goes onto the, score sheet as a interception. Another one, I believe it was a crosser over the middle, hit Xavier Hutchinson in the hands, went past him, and then another that. You don't see that in the score sheet. You don't see like, oh, it hit off the receiver's hands and went into went for an interception, or CJ Stroud absolutely got blasted and it was a pick. You just see that it was a pick. So like there are situations where it's like you have to realize like, yes, he did not play well, but there's other, accentuating circumstances that go around with those things as well.
No, absolutely. But see, that's actual analysis though, right? That actually takes actual study and watching and observation, right? That's not as fun to do, right? When you have a show, not to take shots, but let's be real. When you have a show to do, a radio show to promote, whatever like that, you talking through actual football schematics and nuts and bolts, and the average person's probably not going to hear that, right? Like, what's an X receiver click? Like, no. But if you say like, oh, interceptions, 5 picks, 5 fumbles is all that matters. CJ's terrible. Then you get a lot of people listening, right? So, but again, CJ is not as bad as the box score shows, like you said. And I like how the fact that you contextualize those turnovers, right? The only thing I'll say about the one where CJ got hit in the face on that one, Harrison Bryant, I think he was in on that play. I think he fell down. I think he motioned while that play happened. He trips over, and that play might have been going to him. I don't know for sure, but I know that he was out of the picture once he fell. CJ panicked. He either didn't see a body to throw it to or somebody blocking for him. And again, instead of him just going down, he just stood there and he just took it, which was the worst thing he could have done. So I think my closing point on this whole thing with CJ's growth trajectory is to use something, a version of what Colin Cowherd once said, which is like you don't have to be elite at everything, right? Whether team building or as an individual, you just can't be terrible anywhere. And for CJ Stroud, his growth is going to be predicated on not perfection, but can you just eliminate the terrible? That's all. Like, not the stuff that's not your fault, but like the space that's for you, CJ. Like, you're not going to be perfect, but just eliminate the terrible, or at least minimize it to where it's fewer and far in between of you, and it doesn't become who you are, right? And I don't think he's there yet. But which again, I want to bridge off of this. So segue. So we talked about how CJ has dealt with some injuries from key position players in the past that have affected his ability to produce, right? one of which being Stefon Diggs in 2024, who was one of your prized trade acquisitions, right? Who came in. He played some good football. He was a good veteran presence. He got you multiple touchdowns, brought some dance moves and some sauce, which was cool. But we ended up rearranging his contract to where basically he was a 1 year rental and he left, right? Went to the New England Patriots and had a 1,000-yard season. Ended up in the Super Bowl, right? We know this because they beat us to get there. He caught a touchdown in the divisional round to beat us. So we know this. But now the man is out of a job, right? So lo and behold, he comes out and says, quoting, from your X account, Jeremy, Stefon Diggs claims he would be wide receiver 2 on any team in the NFL. That's new, not wide receiver 1, but wide receiver 2. Chat Sports Office debated these players to be on the same level or better than Diggs. What are our thoughts? You said T. Higgins, George Pickens, Jordan Addison, Devontae Adams, Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers. Now, I know that you were making a broader point about just ranking the tier twos. I'm sorry, the wide receiver twos. But my focus is more on this, right? The Texans need wide receiver depth, right? Or at least that's what we're saying. Stefon Diggs is out there saying, "Hey, hello, excuse me, I'm the best wide receiver 2, or I'm the best non-wide receiver 1 in the NFL right now." So, Jeremy, I'll ask you, man, like, is it worth a shot to bring him back in? Yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I think it is a catch-22 by signing Stefon Diggs. One, you upgrade your wide receiver room instantly, right? Like, no doubt adding Stefon Diggs to this room would make it better. Like, I think, from the very least, like you have another reliable receiver. And especially like we talked about earlier, the fact that Nico Collins hasn't played a full 17-game season does worry me a little bit. Like, I think Nico is a true wide receiver 1. I think he's that guy. But Stefon Diggs, like, I think he ticks off a lot of boxes on, like, he has rapport with C.J. Stroud, obviously, has played with him. And people talk about like, oh, well, and the one article that I kind of referenced whenever I was talking about it is a good buddy, Jonathan Alexander, the Houston Chronicle. He, in one of his articles, wrote like, if the Texans were going to sign a wide receiver, they would have done it already because, you need time to acclimate. You need time to learn this, that, and the other. The one player I would disagree with that, though, would be Stefon Diggs. Because one, he's played with C.J. Stroud. He's played with this team. I know he wasn't with Nick Caley, but look where he was playing last year. He was playing with the Patriots and Josh McDaniels, who, if there's any team that Nick Caley emulates, if there's any team that, he bases his offense around, it would be Josh McDaniels and the New England Patriots. So he playing in a similar scheme, already knows this city, already knows the quarterback, already knows the head coach in D'Amico Ryans. Like, I don't think it would take him long at all to acclimate. Now, on the other side of the coin is signing a guy like Stefon Diggs. Does that hinder Jaden Higgins and his development? Because a lot of people are expecting him to take that year 2 leap, right? Like, they drafted him basically, I'll say a round 1 guy, right? Like, he was the second pick in round 2 whenever the Texans selected him out of Iowa State. So a lot of people had a round 1 grade on him. Fringe round 1, draftee would be Jaden Higgins. So you expect him year 2 to be that solidified wide receiver 2. And if you sign Stefon Diggs, my worry is, does that take away reps for Jaden Higgins? Does that stunt his development as a wide receiver 2? Because, if you sign Diggs, he's going to be the second guy on the field. He's not, coming in as your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. That's not happening. He's going to be on the other side of Nico Collins. When you go 3 wide receiver sets, you'll probably have Jaden Higgins in there. And, the other discussion is, once again, are you burying Jalen Knoll? Somebody who Texans fans were begging and pleading to see more last season, but we saw more Christian Kirk than Jalen Knoll in the offense. So, it's, yes, you get better, but at what cost? And I think it's, 1 in the hand, 2 in the bush. Like, you have Stefon Diggs, you know what he can be. But what can Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll be? Like, are you sacrificing what they can be for what Stefon Diggs is? And, he is a fleeting asset. He's getting older. He, in wide receiver terms, is a older guy who maybe has, 1 or 2 seasons left of him being a, good wide receiver 1. And I think he kind of sees that a little bit as well. And his comments saying like, oh, I might not be a wide receiver 1 anymore, but I'm the best wide receiver 2. And I was, scripting a show around that. I was talking about that with some guys in the office, and then it became just an office-wide debate where everybody's just naming wide receiver 2s, and they're like, okay, is Stefon Diggs better than T. Higgins? Is he better than George Pickens? Is he better? And, there were obviously some crazy names that were thrown out there. Somebody said Ricky Pearsall, and somebody said, other players along those, which I don't agree with. I don't think that Stefon Diggs is
Ricky Pearsall.
yeah,
Cool is that?
the discourse went down very quickly. But there were some good points of like there are guys around the league that you could argue are better wide receiver twos than Stefon Diggs. And then that led me to the point of, is Jaden Higgins that guy? Is Jaden Higgins on the list of somebody who is a better wide receiver two than Stefon Diggs? Because we saw, glimpses of him last year, and the hope is that he does turn out to be that guy. Like I think, I would be a little disappointed, like barring injury or anything else, if Higgins doesn't, eclipse 750 receiving yards this year or like 800 yards this year as being the wide receiver too. Like you expect him to at least get to that mark, maybe even get close to 1,000 yards. So if you bring in Stefon Diggs, I don't think he's getting those numbers. And, it makes it harder to evaluate him as somebody who is on a rookie deal, and you want to make the most out of your guys on rookie deals, right? Because, the Texans are learning that quickly. You're having to pay all these guys coming up at the end of their deals. They already had to do it with Will Anderson, Derek Stingley, Jalen Petrie. They have Kamari Lassiter and Kalen Bullock coming up. They want to make the most out of these guys on rookie deals. And if Jaden Higgins, you don't know what you have in him by year 3 or year 4, it makes it difficult to re-sign him. It makes it difficult to, really put a price tag on his value if you're like, oh, well, he's really good, but, we haven't given him kind of the reins as that wide receiver too. So that's kind of the good and the bad with signing Diggs. And it's a tough decision, right? Like that's why NFL GMs like Nick Caserio get paid bukus of money, because they're the ones that make these tough decisions on, do you go out and sign Diggs? Do you like add him and, solidify your room? Or do you take a chance on your guys improving and Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins stepping up? And I love to hear your thoughts on, whether or not you think Jaden Higgins is a wide receiver too in the NFL. Because, I mean, like I said, we were making the debate of, Diggs, where he ranks amongst wide receiver twos. And I honestly didn't know where to put Jaden Higgins amongst all the NFL wide receiver twos because it's a huge question mark.
Mm-hmm. So before I get to Higgins here, because I just want an excuse to play this this sound effect here. So here's my answer on bringing in Stefon Diggs. Hold on.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Right. And let me preface, the man just had 1,000 yards with the Patriots, right? Age 32, going on 33. He looks healthy, right? That was not to say that Stefon Diggs cannot play anymore. That's not what I mean. But it's basically to take everything you just said and to encapsulate it in, but this is not the situation, time, or the place for a Stefon Diggs, right? You're not that guy in that if he comes over here, you took the words out of my mouth, he definitely is going to be out to prove that he is like still one of the upper tier wide receivers in all the NFL. That's just who he is. And it's kind of, you love that because that's competitive, right? He's not coming over to ride coattails. He's coming to prove his worth at the potential expense of your young guys who are trying to develop, who already did not get a lot of reps last year, who, like, to use Nola again, for example, like you brought up, guys who already were struggling to get reps last season behind guys like Christian Kirk, who didn't really give you any confidence in that decision in the first place because his regular season was abysmal compared to what he was in playoffs. So we already got a lot of question marks that you're trying to answer right now. So that's why I played that, besides just be funny. But, right, I just don't think this is the situation for Stefon Diggs. But if you ask me something like a Keenan Allen, right, 34 years old, excuse me, will be 35 next year, but a guy who is a more than seasoned vet, who has had his peaks in the NFL, who I would think would come in and more so would know his place amongst wide receivers. Again, he's competitive because that's what all guys are, which is what you should want. But he's not coming in, at least I don't believe he'd be coming in to take reps from the young guys. I think he'd come in to add a veteran presence, a chain mover, a guy who's smart, who could teach the slot receivers, who can teach all the receivers, who could teach CJ, just a guy who comes in and just brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the position, and you don't have a concern for diva mentality or taking away from guys. So if anybody would be like a great fit, I would choose a Keenan Allen, who has long since been a rumored Texans target for at least a couple seasons now. But to your question about Jaden Higgins, I mean, last year, I want to say he tied for the team lead in touchdowns at 6, right? Like he had a slow start, not because he himself was bad as a rookie, but because he just wasn't the priority, right? Like it is weird because him and Noel both as a package, they really were neglecting this offense early on. And Higgins specifically did not really get going until week 4 against the Titans, where he finally caught a deep ball for a touchdown. And that kind of showed like, oh wait, he can be a vertical threat. Oh, he can be a field stretcher. And then later on in the season, he became a clutch guy. Like example against the Kansas City Chiefs, when CJ went into the right of the pocket, I forget down distance and quarter, but it was late in the ball game, and it was a really clutch drive that would help the Texans win the game eventually because they were able to keep possession. It's when CJ runs to the right, hit Higgins, I think near the sideline for that clutch first down, to keep the drive going, right? So that's what Higgins ended up developing into in the season, right? So we already saw some growth for him from just being a downfield threat to an actual first down, good contested catcher that you really want at the receiver position. So for me, I think Higgins, if I had to project it out at least immediately, I would get him at an above average wide receiver 2. I think he'd be an elite wide receiver 3. I think whatever Xavier Hutchinson is supposed to be, I think if you put Higgins in that spot, you have an elite wide receiver core. If we have that conversation. At 2, I think depending on his growth, he could be above average to good. But again, for me, it depends a lot on his mentality. The tangibles are there. The tools are there. Long, rangy, basically Nico Collins 2.0 on the opposite side of the field. It's just that I need to see more physicality from Higgins. I need to see more finishing from Higgins. I need to see him not overcomplicate routes like he did against the Bills, where he had a wide open touchdown that Mills laid out there, but he had one cut too many when the defender fell down and the ball just comes sailing, right? So if we can see better finishing, better physicality, that kind of thing, I think Higgins could work himself into being an upper tier wide receiver 2, but definitely elite wide receiver 3 if that was the situation. But yeah. So, but I'm definitely convinced that Stefon Diggs would not be a good fit now right now. We've already been there, done that. I'm not even going to get into the weird off field stuff. Like I'm not even going to talk about that because we're going to talk about another guy. We're going to talk about another guy in a bit with off field stuff. But strictly football with Diggs, we've been there, done that. 33 years old coming up, and I just think he would need too much attention coming into this wide receiver room. So I don't know if he has something else you were.
No, I mean, I agree. And the other part of it, in kind of alluding to what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, is, do you have other depth concerns or other places that you could allocate the money that you would be paying Stefon Diggs? Because I don't think he's coming. I mean, the reason why he left Houston was to go get more money. He was able to go get more money with the New England Patriots. And I doubt at this point in his career, after saying that he's a top wide receiver 2, the best wide receiver 2 in the NFL, that he's looking to come to the Texans on any sort of discount. And, with a team like the Texans that are kind of strapped for cash a little bit, they were able to, pay all their guys that they thought they deserved to, extend long-term. Will Anderson, they were able to keep Azeez Al-Shire and, other guy on the offensive side, Ed Ingram as well. Are you looking to pay Stefon Diggs? Why? Because wide receiver 2 money, like, what are we talking, like 15 to 20 mil for the season? Like, I don't think the Texans can afford that.
Or should they? And you brought up a good point. So if you had to choose, because for me, the 3 biggest depth concerns right now, besides wide receiver 3, is wide receiver 3, defensive end 3, and running back 3. All the threes. Actually, corner 2, cornerback 3, running back 3, and then what we're talking about here. So where would you go? Like what tertiary position would you invest in as opposed to wide receiver 3 right now?
Me personally, I would go edge. I would go edge 3 is the one that I would be looking at. Obviously that could change if, Demo or Dominic Robinson looks really good. If, Dylan Horton shows up and is like, somebody who you're like, oh, wow, like this guy can actually ball. But like, I think one interview that I go back to, and I believe our guy Stressens posted it a couple months ago, was a couple years back, Texans defensive line coach Rod Wright talked about how he likes to implement different guys on the defense and especially on the defensive line and keep his guys healthy. Because he referred to a game that, the Texans played up against the Falcons, and, we had Will Anderson running around the field trying to catch Bijan Robinson. And he was like, by the time we got into, money downs, 3rd and long, pass
Yes.
where you need the pass rush, he was gassed. So I
Yeah.
think the Texans have done a really good job over this past season, the year before, in keeping their guys fresh. And right
Mhm.
now, I don't see you being able to do that as much. Like, I think you're needing Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter to be on the field more because the reps that they're out of the field, like, I don't like how steep is the drop off? Because last year, I don't think, it's definitely a drop off. There's nobody on this team that is close to Will Anderson or Danielle Hunter on this
Mhm.
defensive line, but at least you had guys that, were good and who could, at least play like above average level of play, like Danico Autry, like Derek Barnett, like Mario Edwards. I thought those guys all played really well. And, do the Texans have that guy? I still would love for the Texans to possibly bring back Derek Barnett. Like, I would love for them to make a move like that. But I think edge rusher is the one position that I'm looking at that I'm like, I feel like the depth there concerns me a little bit.
No, I would agree. And there's a man out there named Von Miller who I think would be a phenomenal addition here. Now, it might be a little bit pricey, but you have the cap space. And like you said, if we're not throwing that money at Stefon Diggs, we can roll that over there. Now, reports are that Von Miller supposedly posted a picture of himself in a Cowboys uniform, which I think is so beneath him. You picked the right state but the wrong team, right? So look, we got plenty of space over here. Former A&M, just come on, right? Just
Yeah.
you're in the right state. No state income tax. We got the money
Well,
for you.
is it kind of like the Stephon Diggs situation where if he goes to the Cowboys, he's their, edge rusher 1 or 2. If he
Mhm.
comes to the Texans, he's only a situational. Like, he is clearly behind Danielle Hunter, clearly behind Will Anderson with the
Sure.
Texans. If he goes to the Cowboys, he's just like, so like, how does he view himself? Does he view himself as somebody who is a backup or somebody that can still start?
And I get that. And I'll raise you this. Vaughn, listen, bro, you've already proven yourself. You got 1 to 2 Super Bowl rings. You don't have to be that guy. You can come in and we'll put you in the best position to still dominate on money downs. You will still get the spotlight. Not saying that's what he's doing it for, but I mean, there's a way to dress this up to where, sir, you're joining the best defense in the NFL with the best pass rushing duo in the NFL. You can make it the best pass rushing trio. There you go, trio NFL by joining only on money downs. And I guarantee you this, Jeremy. If we had a Von Miller who looks every bit of healthy and still productive with the right mentality, because he wants to play, right? It's not like a playing out the strings. Like he wants to play, even so much as saying that he picked the wrong team last season when he picked Commanders over the Seahawks. So he definitely probably wants to get that bitter taste out of his mouth of missing out on probably his third championship. Why not? Go ahead, come over. I think Will Daniil be a great situation to go to. There's no egos here, right? Like no one's gonna sun you. You are the elder statesman. Like I said about Keenan, you're gonna teach the young guys, add on to the game, and be a finisher on the best
Yeah.
defense on the best defensive line on money downs. No, we don't even need you for downs 1, 2. Just come in 3 and 4, and you're gonna eat. That's
Call
all we
call me
need.
call me crazy. I might be okay with taking discount Derek Barnett rather than
What?
spending the money on Von Miller. Just because if you pay Von Miller, like like if he's willing to take a major discount, yeah, of course, give me Von Miller. But if he's still looking to make a little buck, like if he's like, oh, like I still want to
Yeah,
get paid like 10 to
yeah,
15 million, like I'd much rather take Derek Barnett at like 7
sure.
million and
Yeah.
still have space to, because I'll say this, like knock on wood, the Texans, they were relatively healthy last year on defense.
Mhm.
And the other position that we didn't really touch on, but could be a position that we look at this season if any injuries happen. Once again, knock on wood, if any injuries happen, is a linebacker, right? Like if one of our top 2 guys go down, like that might be a problem as well. So like you need to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room throughout the season if somebody gets injured, if something happens, that you can go ahead and running back 3, like you were saying, like if Woody or Demo goes down, like you're
Mhm.
gonna want to make a move or be able to make something happen, and you want that wiggle room to basically be like, okay, like if an injury happens, if something goes down, we have the ability to go out and sign somebody. We have the money to be able to fill that position, to where if you sign, kind of like we were just saying with Stefon Diggs, but if you sign Von Miller, like what kind of wiggle room do you have?
Sure. I agree. You're being very responsible. I agree. 100%. I got you.
It's more fun. It's more fun to be
Yeah.
like NASCAR package. You slide Daniil like at the 3 tech.
Mhm.
You have Von Miller, Will Anderson on the outside. Like that's every quarterback's worst nightmare.
Oh my goodness. Like, oh my gosh. So, the league better be glad that the Texans are very fiscally responsible. They better be glad. But speaking of defensive depth, right? So there's another man who you spoke about on your YouTube channel. And again, guys, go check out what Jeremy's doing. It works extremely hard, very consistent, bringing you all the latest news and updates about the Houston Texans in very bite-sized and edible forms. So I picked this up. So we were talking about Mr. Terrion Arnold, right? Former 24th overall drafted Detroit Lions draft pick, who, for those who've been living on a rock, has been cut by the team because of off the field issues. But I will not jump out in front of this. I'm going to let Jeremy break this down for you, along with a couple of reasons as to why we're having this conversation.
Terrion Arnold was arrested last month in a kidnapping case in Tampa, Florida, and a lot of teams have been hesitant to reach out to the former Alabama Crimson Tide corner. Now, the Houston Texans brought him in for a workout and a physical, and people were asking, well, why would the Texans do that, right? He's not going to start for this team. We have Derek Stingley, we have Kamari Lassiter. What is the reason for the Texans bringing in Terrion Arnold? I think two major reasons. One is because Nick Saban, former Alabama head coach, gave him a letter of recommendation to the court, basically defending his character and saying that this isn't the Terrion Arnold that he knows and that he has been an upstanding citizen since he's known him in 2021. Obviously, head coach DeMeco Ryans has a very close relationship with Nick Saban, so if he's giving the seal of approval, I think DeMeco Ryans is okay with it. The other reason is that his agent, Nicole Lynn, also represents Will Anderson Jr. and Ed Ingram, so she has some sort of in with this Texans front office, and even if the Texans don't sign him, they're probably doing her a solid by bringing him in for a workout, for a physical to the Texans facility. My question to you is, do you think the Texans should sign Terrion Arnold?
Interesting.
Very well put by that young man. Very well put.
Very smart guy. We should get him on the show one day. All right, so Jeremy, man. So hearing yourself. So I mean, what do you make of this, man? Like, so the news broke late last week, that the Texans not only were interested, but they had already worked him out, right? So they'd already made some moves behind the scenes, and we just come to find out about it after the fact. So again, I'm gonna throw it over to you. This is your point. So what do you make of the current state of things now that the whole Terrion Arnold interest has hit the news cycle for the Houston Texans?
So I guess just a little peek behind the curtain for me and a lot of the guys here at Chat Sports. My guy Mitchell Rins actually was the one that really told me this whenever I first started covering the team and whenever I first started, getting into the content creation field, is whenever there's a free agent rumor, whenever there's a trade rumor, you got to trace it back to, are there any connections? Like, is there any sort of tie between this guy and your team, this guy and people on your team that make it where, it would make some sort of sense. So as soon as I heard around Terrion Arnold, meeting with the Texans, being a player that the Texans had in for a physical, they worked out one of 4 teams to, have him scheduled for a workout. I was like, okay, well, what kind of connection does Terrion Arnold have to the team? First one, very obvious, played for Alabama. And then you look up, Nick Saban wrote him a letter of recommendation to the court and said basically, he doesn't know the, all the ins and outs of the case, but just, was willing and, able to be a character witness for Terrion Arnold, enough so to where he recommended the judge at least give him a lesser sentence or give him a little bit of a grievance on, this case towards Terrion Arnold, and talking about his character. And since he's known him since 2021. So that's one thing. And if we know anything about DeMeco Ryans, the Texans head coach, he's an Alabama guy. He loves the Crimson Tide, and he's a huge Nick Saban guy. Right? He credits Nick Saban a lot for helping him get into the coaching ranks and, helping him, whenever he's had any questions about coaching. So if anybody in coaching sphere DeMeco Ryans respects, it's Nick Saban. So that's one tie right there that I was like, okay, that makes sense. Nick Saban with the Texans, this, that, and the other. And then the other part was, his agent. His agent, Nicole Lynn, was the one kind of feeding the information, telling this to, reporters, telling this to Adam Schefter about the teams that he was meeting with. And then you look up her client list, and it is, Will Anderson and Ed Ingram, 2 guys who the Texans were able to get contracts with, get those contracts done this offseason. Ed Ingram and Will Anderson, and we didn't really hear any negatives towards that. And you don't usually hear like any negatives towards contract disputes with the Texans, which is a good thing. Like over the past couple of seasons, at least with our star players, you don't want to David Mulligetta with the Cowboys situation where it's kind of heated between the two sides. And you look at that and you say, okay, well, she represents two players that the Texans have gotten deals done with. She also represents this player. So it's very much the case that she could have, gone in and had, with the Texans front office said like, hey, I have another player. Like, you don't have to sign him, but will you at least bring him in for a workout? Will you at least like see what he's got? And the Texans are saying, like, what do we have to lose, right? Like, it's helping out this agent who has done right with us in the past, who we've been able to get deals done with, and then also you're able to better evaluate Terrion Arnold, to where if he is available, if you do need him, you have the inside track to probably sign him if you do want to.
Mm-hmm. No, I got you. Yeah, that's a lot of the off the field connections. It makes a lot of sense. It's deep. This is why you make the big bucks.
And beyond that, like he's somebody who, if you are able to sign him for the cheap, which at this point he will probably sign a very cheap contract for a team just to remain playing, because kind of to turn this away from football, we saw what happened with Conor McGregor this past weekend, and very few times have you seen a player at the professional level, besides injury, sometimes due to injury as well, but miss significant time and come back and be the same level of player that they are. So if I'm Terrion Arnold, any way that I possibly can, I'm trying to get out there on the field and play this season to remain at that level. Because if you miss a year and a half, it's really hard to get back into the swing of things. It's really hard to get back to that same level that you once were. So if I'm Terrion Arnold, any way that I can, I'm trying to make a team. I'm trying to get out there and play this season. And for the Texans, it would be great because, we talked about earlier, knock on wood, for the fifth time today, there were no injuries really last year in the Texans secondary besides that safety spot. The corners were relatively healthy. Jalen Petrie, Kalen Bullock, relatively healthy. But to have a guy who is a low-end starter, like at this point, I would say like he's a starting cornerback, but probably a more low-end starter. But to have him as a reserve would be a huge get for the Texans to boost their depth at the cornerback spot.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on what you just said, like the football point being, the fact that Terrion Arnold, you bringing him in, that is purely a depth move. He is not challenging anybody for any starting reps, and here's why. And I don't want to sound like a hater, but this is football analysis. I'm just trying to temper expectations. While I do believe that Terrion Arnold would be an upgrade at, cornerback 3 based off his experiences, based on the fact that he's coming in highly touted, 24th overall pick, All-American, led his team in turnovers. Like, we get that. He came out as a blue chip prospect who many thought was a steal for the Lions at 24. So we're not talking about a guy who was barely drafted. He very much was a part of the Detroit Lions' long-term plans. And I'm sure it sucks that the team and the Lions who had the most, let's just say, most to lose in cutting their premium asset, I mean, they're out on them. So I know it sucks for them. But in Kevin Shepard's defense, I mean, we're talking about a cornerback who his strength is man coverage, right? And you're talking about a Texans team fit-wise who play a lot of zone with some man sprinkled in, right? So that's where you got, Stingley and Lassiter, who they eat in those situations because they're there by way of their pass rushers are able just to go and disrupt, and they're able to clean up the mess on the back end, right, when quarterbacks make mistakes. So speaking of the fit for a second, Terrion Arnold is coming in kind of a fish out of water in a sense where it's not that he can't play a lot of zone, it's that his strength is not primarily what the Texans tend to do. But let's just entertain it for a second. If he is here, what does he actually bring in the position? I mean, his rookie season, bro, PFF has it this way. When targeted rookie season, he gave up a 99 passer rating when targeted. The man, his rookie season, had 10 penalties. Let me go back to this article that I pulled up from SI.com. Credit to them. Credit to Ryder, who was this. This was, oh my goodness, there you go. Christian Boer. Him coming out. He had 8 penalties, I think, in the first. I'm sorry, not Boer. I'm sorry, that's not him. I had 2 up at the same time. Vito Turco, there you go. So Vito Turco had this piece where it talked about this, the 99 passer rating, as well as the 8 penalties within the first 4 weeks of his rookie season, 10 total. So I'm sorry for the word salad there, but my point is, we're talking about Terrion Arnold, who rookie season kind of was disastrous. Got better marginally in his second season, sophomore year last year, where it went down from 99 to about 88, right? Which the NFL average for a quarterback rating allowed for cornerbacks is like 88. So that's about right. So you're talking about a guy who not only might be a fit concern, but you're talking about a guy who objectively by himself has played cornerback to a level ranging from either below average to bad to just average. So again, you're bringing in a guy, you're going to the trouble of interviewing him, talking to Nick Saban, getting him in here, working him out for a guy who you literally are going to have to develop almost from the ground up. A guy who did not have the best runway in years 1 and 2. But again, to their credit, I mean, you would want him in a system like this where he can come in and like kind of be hidden as he's getting better at the technique side of things, right? So yes, it's a high upside move bringing him in. He can really turn a lot of things around, being coached by Dean Vazo and guys like that, D'Amico Ryans, Matt Burke, and rubbing shoulders with Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, and Bullock, all them guys back there, Reed, Blankenship. Like, I think it'd be good for him in a bunch of ways, but we got to temper expectations, right? This is if they even want him, because then the other part of this is, let's say they want to sign him, they still might have the hurdle of him being on the commissioner's list if it came to that. So it's just a lot of hurdles, which is why really I looked at your second reason being maybe they did Nicole in a favor, right? Like a good working relationship, Ed Ingram and Will Anderson, and keeping Terrion on NFL teams' radars by saying like he's not injured, he's not hurt,
and that stuff happens all the time. Like within NFL, front offices with stuff like that. Like there are guys that make certain practice squads that are making certain positions because of who their agent is and because of the connections they have. Now, obviously you want guys on your practice squad who, if need be, you can call up and who will be, good players for you at some level. But at the same time, a lot of these, practice squads, a lot of these guys who make the back ends of rosters at certain points, it is 100% based on who, they have around them, the connections they've made, and, possibly who is, representing them.
Okay. So I'll ask you this, man, as we kind of wrap up for today, man. Would you want Terrion? Would you bring him in if you can get him?
Oh, I mean, if it's on a minimum contract, I mean, the two caveats would be contract. Is it on a minimum contract? And then two, what does he have in terms of disciplinary action? Like if he's gonna miss half the season, stuff like that, maybe not. Like, and if he's wanting any sort of money, which I don't see him commanding any sort of high dollar amount, I'd be okay with it. With that being said, I'm excited for Jalen Smith. I'm actually somebody who is in the camp of, I like Elijah Huzzie a lot. I thought whenever he came in last year, he was somebody who played pretty well, and I think would have been somebody who got drafted if he didn't get injured at the end of his career at North Carolina. Like he was an absolute steal as a UDFA for the Texans.
Was it ACL, right, with Huzzie?
Yeah, I believe so. Like it was at the very end of his I actually believe it was like during like the Senior Bowl activities and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I read. I think Senior Bowl got hurt and that took him out. Yeah.
And but he definitely would have been somebody who would have gotten drafted anywhere from round 4 to round 7. That's where we had him ranked for our Chat Sports draft database. So I would say the Texans don't need him, but I trust D'Amico Ryans. I trust this coaching staff enough to where I would be okay with them taking the risk on a player like this because of the locker room, the guys that they've brought in, right? Like we saw them take a chance on C.J. Gardner-Johnson last year. Didn't work out, didn't, mesh well with this locker room, but, they were able to, move on from him and the defense didn't miss a beat, right? Like I think you have strong enough leadership to take chances on these guys, lay out like, hey, this is how we do things here. That swarm, right? Like this is how we do things here. And, if they abide by that, then you have a good story and you have somebody who, maybe can, revitalize their career. If they don't, you move on from them and, up to the next guy. So I'd be okay with either decision if they want to sign him, if they don't want to sign him, because I just believe in this coaching staff.
Right. And to that point, before we wrap up, I do too. Look, I'm much more focused on, like you said, the Elijah Huzzies, the Jalen Smiths. We have guys who have been in the locker room, who have been training, who've been, getting their treatments, who are trying to get back on the field, who want reps, who are hungry and ready to prove themselves. It's a bunch of guys who are ready to go. I would much rather focus on the guys who are already in this locker room give them an opportunity and see what they have. Now, again, if it's a glaring problem, I trust the leadership to recognize that and act upon it accordingly. But like you said, you already have such a stud unit as it is from left to right that you're really trying to just fill in gaps where you can with playmakers. So, which is fine. Like, I'm glad this is where they are in their life cycle, to where we're not looking for a starter. Heck, we're barely even looking for a depth guy, but we're looking for guys who can just proficiently hold down the fort when Stingley needs a blow, when Lassiter needs a blow, a guy who's just not going to get torched in the secondary, when QBs are able to ID when the two dogs are out. So if we can get that from either a Smith, a Huzzy, or heck, Terrion Arnold, if they bring him in, so be it. But I trust this coaching staff. I trust this roster. But I'm excited, man. I am. Yeah, man. So with that being said, we had a lot of stuff to talk about, from Terrion Arnold to C.J. Stroud to Lamar Jackson, all the stuff in between. But Jeremy, I'm thankful to have you on, sir. So tell the people, what are you working on next, man? Where can they find you?
So you can catch me Chat Sports Texans Today. I'm also the host of our Rockets channel, so Rockets Today as well. Today I was breaking down Bruce Thornton. Great start to the summer league, so really excited for both those channels. Also, I'm at Jeremy Chuggs wherever you are, TikTok, IG, on X as well. So if you want to give me a follow along with all my coverage of Houston sports, then go ahead and do so. And obviously the main channel is on YouTube, Texans Today and Rockets Today.
Awesome, man. Like I said, I was so excited to get this done, man, and I love where this is headed. I'm looking forward to the 25th anniversary season. I'm assuming you're going to be at training camp, right?
I'm working on my credential right now, but at the very least, I'm going to try to go to that Raiders joint practice, because training camp, I think, obviously good to see the development, good to see these guys out there. But really the one I'm more interested in is the joint practice, like that joint practice up against the Raiders, just because you get to see these guys up against different competition. Like it's tough to evaluate Jaden Higgins when he's going up against Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter every single rep. Like, obviously that makes him better, iron sharpens iron kind of ordeal, but it's great to see, how he stacks up against other competition around the league, like, the Raiders secondary. Like, how does he fare against them? That's why I'm really looking forward to that joint practice.
Well said, sir. Well, hey, again, my name is Clayton Anderson. I'm the host of the We Want Houston podcast, episode 10. Thank you so much for stopping in. Check out my pieces on TorahTimes.com, daily Texans content and news wherever you want to find it. Of course, that's Jeremy Chuggs over there, covering the Rockets and the Texans for Chat Sports. Check him out. Subscribe. Again, he's one of the hardest workers I know. Check his stuff out. But guys, we got a week into a training camp. We will see you there. Go Texans.